Let's get started here. So that's me. I live in Western Springs with my wife Emily, former prof. And Highway 41 is a great American road. 100 years old. Through 8 states, over 2,000 miles. Runs through large and small cities, suburbs, farms, forests, swampland. The road is an incredible road, but it's also the thread that allowed me to make a narrative on the sheer diversity of this country, north to south. 41 hides in plain sight. It is a vital highway. It continues to be. It's not a historic highway. It's a vital continued highway, but it is very historic. Doesn't always engender the same appreciation as other American roads that have become mainly historical. My challenge was to tell a story that contains vignettes, contains photos, that contains a playlist, all kinds of things that I hope you'll find interesting and something that many people just don't know a lot about. So the beginning of the road is in Copper Harbor, Michigan, and I know a couple people have already said they have been there to the very top. Just down the pike is Lake Superior, and Copper Harbor is a little tourist town, and it ends officially in Miami. It's in the Brickell neighborhood of Miami, Florida. There used to be an end sign there, some 20 odd years ago, there was an end sign, but no longer because there's all kinds of construction. And that's the official end of the road right now. And we know it. Many people know it around here because, well, you know it because it's right in your back corner, but it's DuSable Lakeshore Drive, one of the best known parts in the Midwest. And one of the best known parts in Florida is the Tamiami Trail. And we'll be rolling down Highway 41, which is part of the song Ramblin' Man, the very famous line from the Allman Brothers song. Some parts of the road really thickly congested, some parts just like this, where there's nobody. And this was taken in southern Georgia. So the book is divided into 4 parts. The path is kind of an introductory part, the journey north, the northern states, the southern states, and then kind of a summation. And so long before there was a highway, there was a path, and that was important to the country. And the buffalo were the first to traverse that path. And so there are still buffalo traces that you can discern. They're very faint, but they're still there. And this is long before the road existed. And there are still buffalo that you can see along Highway 41. This is in Indiana. There is a huge area that has been set aside for pasture. As we know, the buffalo were virtually exterminated at the turn of the last century. They've been revived and brought back to prairie conservation areas. And of course, without any further, the buffalo were followed by the indigenous people. And those indigenous settlements are thousands of years old. And the trail of the road was extensively used in commerce by indigenous people long before there were any Europeans around. This is the Etowah Mounds in Calhoun, Georgia. The Mound people who, if you ever go to Cahokia, which you really should try to do, in near St. Louis, these are mounds that were prehistoric. And settlers poured in, and they followed the trail of 41. This is in Lawrenceville, Illinois, which is just across the bridge from Vincennes, Indiana. The statue of Lincoln and the settlers coming in. And no story of 41 is going to be complete without some discussion tonight about the Civil War. There are many statues, cemeteries, museums along the road. There were numerous Civil War battle sites that you can see, particularly in Tennessee and Georgia. The Underground Railroad followed the Trail of 41, as well as the African-American Great Migration that occurred in the last century. This is near Ringgold, Georgia. Railroads, as we know, railroads, before there were roads, there were railroads, and they were numerous, and many of them have been repurposed. There are new railways, but railroads continue to be something that you see along many parts of the road. And industrialization. Companies came and situated themselves along the highway. You'll pass by shuttered factories. You pass by huge distribution centers, data centers. Now, this is the Toyota plant in Princeton, Indiana. And so we come to chapter 2, which is really about the automobile. And like it or not, the automobile is synonymous with America. This is, of course, DuSable Lakeshore Drive in Chicago. In 1926, there were 10 million registered vehicles. Would anybody hazard a guess as of today? Registered, by the way, 10 million registered vehicles in the United States total. As of now, there are 285 million. So the car was liberating. Where there's discussion about AI and what it will do, but the car a century ago was this liberating piece, okay? It broadened the horizon of ordinary people, hastened the growth of cities and suburbs. It changed rural America. And the road system that cars went on has evolved over 100 years. As roads were first developed, they were given names. And so some of these, the Dixie Highway, the Lincoln Highway, the Yellowstone Trail. 41 was the main north-south highway connecting the Midwest to the South prior to the interstate. So 41 once was known as the Dixie Bee, part of the multi-pronged Dixie Highway that never was completed. There's still signs. You can still find some remnants of the Dixie Highway. If you have ever traveled Interstate 75, that's probably the closest approximation to what the Dixie Highway is now. This was the brainchild of a Carl Fisher, and we'll talk a lot more about him in the Florida chapter to come. Two early characters. 41 start is replete with interesting, cool, weird people. The lady on the left is Alma Rittenberry. Alma was from Birmingham, Alabama. She was an ardent suffragette. She was daughters of the Confederacy, and she wanted to have a highway called the Jackson Highway in honor of the President Andrew Jackson. And she got elbowed out by a group of business people who wanted to see a road go further east. And so she got real ticked off, and she formed the Dixie Bee Association, and really her brainchild is what 41 is today. The guy on the right is a guy by the name of A.V. Birch. He was from Evansville, Indiana, born in a log cabin, first highway commissioner of Indiana, and he was a huge promoter of 41, went up and down the country. At the end of his life, he wanted to see it become an interstate. It never became one. Birch was an interesting fellow. He divorced his wife of 50 years to marry a hat check girl, and then divorced her to marry a hairdresser. So interesting guy. So we start our journey in the north, and we start in the Upper Peninsula, known by most locals there as the UP. Okay, natural beauty, resource riches, economic transition. It's different from the rest of the state. It's huge. Okay, it's 279 miles from the top Copper Harbor to Menominee. 29% of the land area of Michigan, but 3% of the total population. And as you can see, some of the, to the east is the Pictured Rocks National Lake Shore. You can take the road to Sault Ste. Marie and the road up to Canada. Giant area of the state. And it's beautiful. And I would just highly recommend, if you can get up there, particularly in the fall or the summer, it's gorgeous country, the Keweenaw Peninsula. Beautiful parks just off of the 41. This is Canyon Falls Park. You can get out of the car and walk into this beautiful area right there. Why was this area important? And it had to do with mining. Copper and iron ore were the mainstays of the UP economy. Most of the mines are closed. This is the Quincy mine near Hancock, Michigan, that is now a museum. Is there still mining going on? Yes, there is, but not quite to the extent it was, and not employing all the people that it once did. So what is there now? Tourism and recreation. This is in Marquette, which is kind of the main town, main city in the UP. It's a tourist destination. There is more recreational pursuits done. You can see here the old ore dock, which is now on the National Register of Historic Places, and then there's sailboats. And we move from the UP to Wisconsin. And I love this picture because it's all Wisconsin. And that's cheese, okay? Cheese, one of the products most associated with the state. If you've had frozen pizza, you've probably had it with Wisconsin cheese. 41 through a big chunk of Wisconsin is an interstate. From Green Bay to the state line, Illinois state line, it's an interstate. And what I wanted to do, and what I would suggest you do if you want to ever do this, is to try to take the original parts of 41 that go through the small towns. 175 goes from Fond du Lac to Milwaukee, and that's the original part of 41. Most of the people in the state of Wisconsin, by the way, live in this eastern part. And it's not far from Lake Michigan. And any of you who have gone to Door County, the Cape Cod of the Midwest, you haven't been far away. There's rivers and forests traversed by the road. This is a lighthouse near Racine. There are picture postcard dairy farms, but those picture postcards sometimes are of places that are slowly disappearing. There are fewer of them all the time. There's more consolidation. There's an aging farm base. Milwaukee exurbs continue to go out. And 30 miles north of Milwaukee, the exurbs start for the city and the metropolitan region we live in. Green Bay, the first significant city encountered on the journey south. Green Bay, one of the oldest cities in North America, dates from 1634. Does anybody know that? No, because we talk about the Packers and the Packers football team and Lambeau Field. And Green Bay, by the way, has been cited as one of the best places to live in the US for affordability. But where the locus of traffic and interest in people and so forth is near the stadium. There's a big innovation center nearby, convention center. It's more like a year-round place, and this is something that we see in other places along the road, okay, with sports stadiums. Talk about it in Chicago too. Milwaukee, Wisconsin's largest city. Evolving from an industrial past. Many of you would probably remember the TV show Happy Days, and there's Fonzie, okay, the Bronze Fonz. And Milwaukee is cutting edge in many ways. It's got fantastic architecture, it's got art, it's got music, it's got a great culinary scene. This is the art museum, the Calatrava Art Museum. Go see it if you can. It's just up the road from here. It's beautiful. And it's a city that I think embraces the old as well. The Pfister is one of the classic Milwaukee hotels. I think the city hangs on to its past, but it's not defined by it. If you are in Wisconsin, you got to go to a supper club. Just up the way from here is the Hobnob in Mount Pleasant. But there are many classic supper clubs in the state. I don't think a visit to Wisconsin is complete without going to one where you get a fish fry on Friday, relish trays, perfectly made old-fashioned brandy, and it's a Wisconsin thing. And we move on to Illinois. The heart of the nation, as Abraham Lincoln said, the most normal state in the United States due to its mixture of rural, urban, and suburban. It's 65 miles in Illinois, smallest state area covered by the road. 75% of the population of our state lives within the Chicago metropolitan area. And as you know, just up the way from here, Zion, and which I have a nice vignette on Mr. Reverend Dowie, who founded it. Waukegan, an old industrial city. And then we, of course, are into the Chicago mega region. 9.6 million of us live in this area. Chicago is the third largest city in the country. And why was it established? Why did it become so big? It has always been about its location, its geography. The location on the waterways first, and then later the railways, and now the highways, the most congested place in the country, in the world, by the way. Number one is Chicago now, in terms of traffic. You are living in the North Shore, and it is a gorgeous area with culture. There are very high-end suburbs along the North Shore. The Ravinia, of course, festival is in Highland Park. A place that I always take visitors to, if they're not from here, is the Baha'i House of Worship. I think it's just one of the most beautiful sites there could possibly be in the area. And the road, so I purposely, sometimes I would be on 41 and through much of 41 through here is, of course, one of the original superhighways that was built in the 1930s. But along Sheridan Road is the original 41. And so I took that, and of course, much more interesting. But you wind your way, and if you go on Sheridan or if you go on 41 through Skokie, you'll wind your way through neighborhoods, and eventually you get to DuSable Lakeshore Drive, where once every year, right around Labor Day, is Bike the Drive. And that's the one day you can get on that road and see it what it was originally, okay? Unfortunately, for those of us who have toured along that road over time, it is much more evolved into a major traffic artery, very congested one at times along the lakefront. There's been, by the way, lots and lots of ideas and plans and what can we do to change this? And we'll see what comes to fruition. One most heavily used parks is, of course, Lincoln Park, right off the road. And for those, again, if you take visitors, Rising Oz-like out of the prairie, flat prairie is the Chicago skyline that you get as you drive on the highway. And the city has the open lakefront, which is one of the very few cities that had the foresight to do that. A common to remain forever open, clear, and free. It's not always been the case, but it still remains pretty open. And where else can you get beaches? Beaches literally that are steps away from downtown. With icons such as Grant Park, Buckingham Fountain. And for those of you wandering in Grant Park and the South Loop, and there's General Logan and South Loop redevelopment. And unfortunately, many tourists, many people who live here and their stretch and they, okay, well, we're all done. And then you miss the South Side. And the South Side, I think, is much more worth seeing and far less touristed. This is the South Shore Cultural Center. And what is about to be coming in June is the Obama Center that is in Hyde Park, okay? Slated to open in June of this year. And if you continue down the road and you go just to the west, you'll see one of the newest national parks nearby, which is the Pullman National Historical Park. All kinds of labor history there. Fantastic place to see. And we come to the Hoosier State, Indiana, where I came from originally. Indiana shares a long border with Illinois. 41 runs 242 miles, 282 miles from the Illinois border to almost the Ohio River. Lots of little towns. It is the crossroads of America, as the state motto says. It's a central location, extensive transportation, but for many of us, it's a state you have to go through to go anywhere else. Some of the best farmland in the world, by the way, is located in Indiana and in Illinois as well. And we come to the region, which is the first area that 41 traverses through. And it's in the news today because the Chicago Bears are looking at a piece of land across the border in Hammond. And we'll see what happens. But I found that very, very fascinating and weird. And we could talk about that in the Q&A. So once upon a time, the region was known for the steel industry. It's become much more diverse. There's a huge medical complex right across the border. This is a diner in Highland, Minor Dunn. If you walk in this diner, it hasn't changed in 60 years. And beyond Lake County, you start to get into farmland. And you see the windmills. This is in Benton County, Indiana. And you can go through little towns. And there are little towns that have really cool things to see. This is an 1940 Art Deco movie theater in Fowler, Indiana. And then there are little towns that you go through that there isn't anything cool to see. And once upon a time, they were an important place, and there isn't anything there anymore. And I saw quite a few of those on the road. This is downtown Carlisle, Indiana. And there's further down is Park County, where there are covered bridges, big covered bridge festival every year. Really pretty country along Old 41. A very overlooked part of history is in this Western Indiana area. This is in Vincennes, the George Rogers Clark Memorial. It commemorates the key battle of the American Revolution. The Battle of Tippecanoe would be not far away, set the stage for the War of 1812. Mind you, I was the only person walking in this building. I and the park ranger had a nice conversation. And there are interesting footnotes. There's markers all along the road. And this is a marker in front of the Vincennes Courthouse honoring Mary Clark. Mary Clark was born a slave in Kentucky. She was brought across the border into Indiana, and the Northwest Compromise was in existence. Indiana was a free state. Mary Clark sued for her freedom and won in court in 1821. Indentured servitude ended. Evansville is at the bottom of the state, right along the Ohio River. There's some beautiful old libraries, by the way, to see in Indiana. Evansville has one of the oldest ballparks in the country. A League of Their Own was filmed there. Historic homes, other interesting attractions. But if you're in Evansville, you need to go 20 miles further and right along the very tip of the state is New Harmony, which was the former Utopian community. This is the roofless church by the architect Philip Johnson. A wealthy benefactor came to New Harmony, who was related to one of the founders, and got all kinds of really interesting architecture there. And so we move from Indiana to Kentucky. In the South, of course, is where a lot of the population has gone in the last 30 odd years. Kentucky, the road through there is replete with small towns, and it's 106 miles. It's in Western Kentucky. As you can see, the big chunk of Eastern Kentucky is further over. It's parallel to the interstate for a lot of it. There was an alternate Highway 41 41A that you can take. There's some big tourist areas nearby. Mammoth Cave, the largest known cave system in the world, is not far away. Henderson, Kentucky, one of my favorite towns along the way. There's a fountain in Central Park. It's right across the Ohio River from Evansville. The oldest municipal park west of the Allegheny Mountains, founded in 1797. And along the way, there are many of them. Henderson has a great one. Carnegie Libraries. This one was established in 1904. Inside it is a display honoring a librarian there. Her name was Mary Towle Cecine. She was the originator of Mother's Day. Further down the road is Hopkinsville, known by locals as Hoptown. Perfectly preserved little town. It didn't get the big redevelopment that so many places did. It didn't want it, and so it's got lots of cool old buildings. Just outside of the main area of the town is the Trail of Tears Commemorative Park. There are many markers denoting the 5,000-mile Trail of Tears of the forced displacement of indigenous people by the US government along 41. We'll talk about this more. It's very rural through a lot of it, and it's fun to see. It's tobacco country. It's rolling terrain that was known locally as the Petty Ryle. And among the weird things you'll see are Confederate monuments. This is the Jefferson Davis Historic Site that looks like the Washington Monument. That's correct. It was built in 1924. 160 years later, the Civil War still resonates. And there's cool little roadside oddities through Kentucky. This is one of two pink elephants that you can see on the journey. And we come to Tennessee. Tennessee, when I was governor, I was looking for a way to unify our state. I realized music is about the only thing that unifies Tennessee. That was spoken by Governor Lamar Alexander. And 41 runs right through the middle of the state. You know, Tennessee's a big rectangle, and it's parallel to I-24 for much of its traverse through the state. And the first city of sorts, about 15 odd miles to the east of where 41 is now, is Clarksville. Old river town. Clarksville has grown in leaps and bounds because Fort Campbell Military Base, one of the largest military bases in the country, is located right next door to it on the Kentucky side. This is the Clarksville Customs House Museum and Cultural Center, and inside is an exhibit to Wilma Rudolph, talking about the Olympics right now. Wilma Rudolph was an Olympic champion in 1960. And the town was thrilled to death. She had won all these gold medals, and they wanted to have a huge parade and celebration and dinner in her honor. And she said, I will come if it's integrated. And integration happened in Clarksville, Tennessee in 1960. And so we move further south. We come to Springfield. And what you see are some farm towns that I showed you that are kind of, there's no reason to be there anymore. And then there's farm towns that aren't farm towns anymore. There's suburbs. And this is about 29 miles from Nashville. And we come to Nashville, next major city that we stopped in. And what you're seeing there is the district, which is what tourists see, downtown Nashville, with the bars, honky-tonk bars, and lots and lots of tourists. It's the bachelorette capital of America. You see lots of inebriated people on the sidewalks. Nash Vegas is a nickname for it. Nashville is growing in leaps and bounds. It's sprawling, growing rapidly. Some suggest the state bird should now be the construction crane. By the way, that's just outside of the state capital. Nashville, all about growth, okay? How home prices are climbing. Nashville doesn't have an infrastructure as we have it here, okay? And so it was a small government academic city that's grown in leaps and bounds. So there's enormous congestion now that is taking place. Public transit doesn't really exist and the level that it's necessary. One of the iconic Nashville monuments, if you're there, is the Parthenon. And within the Parthenon, you got to go inside because you'll see Athena. And Nashville, I found one fascinating city because it is, as somebody said to me, a native, he said, we are in the South, but not of the South. So we south of Nashville, some of the very prettiest country along the road is south of Nashville. This is near Manchester, Tennessee. You can take the Tennessee Whiskey Trail not far away. There's beautiful parks and forests south of Nashville. There's beautiful rural scenery that you'll go by in 41, and it's not jam-packed interstate. It's very less congested. You can sometimes be the only car on the road. As I was on this bridge, crossing the Tennessee River, I was the only car. I got out of the car and I took a picture of I-24 across the way. And if you've ever driven through I-24, it's heavily traffic, thickly congested. And you come, very heavily advertised is the Lookout Mountain and Ruby Falls tourist attractions. I suggest you go to Point Park, which is on Lookout Mountain. You get a gorgeous view of what's called Moccasin Bend and the city of Chattanooga. Chattanooga, fourth largest city in the state, always a big railroad town, but it's evolving into a tech hub as well. It once was one of the most polluted cities in the country and is now considered a major destination for tourists and residents. It's been written up as a place for seniors to retire to. Big aquarium there, nice parks, very lovely downtown. And we come into Georgia. Georgia, the New South and the Old South. Huge chunk of 41 is through Georgia. 387 miles, much of it parallel to I-75. To the east of, let's say, Dalton and that area is the Chattahoochee-Oconee National Forest. The Appalachian Trail begins there. But one of the places that, and you're going to see several along the way, right across the border, and it shares it with Tennessee, is the Chattanooga-Chickamauga battlefield, one of the numerous Civil War battlefields to visit. It's a very moving place to see, lots of statues. The Park Service does a terrific job of keeping it. It's a gorgeous place to see. And we come into Dalton, the carpet capital of the world. The peacock symbolizes the community's heritage. I have an extended vignette about Catherine Whitner. Catherine was 12 years old and she developed a tufted technique of knitting, and she she quilted a bedspread, and everybody liked that bedspread. So she made another one, and then another one, and then she taught ladies how to do it. And so it was the bedspread capital before it was the carpet capital. And this huge industry evolved out of Catherine Whitner. There's a statue of her in Dalton. Further down is Calhoun, where there's a statue of Sequoia, the polymath indigenous person who invented the Cherokee alphabet. And not far is New Echota. This is hallowed ground for the Cherokee people. The Trail of Tears started here in 1838 to 1839. This was the first and only national capital of the Cherokee. And to this day, students from Oklahoma reservation schools will have their high school graduation in New Echota. Carl Finster's Paradise Garden is a must-see. It's about 20 miles away. Carl was a preacher, a self-taught artist. God spoke to him one day and said to create fantastic folk art. It's exhibited worldwide. He has this thoroughly awesome place to see. They have a festival there every year, a must if you're going to go down. And I love cool old weird things such as Old Car City. This is in White, Georgia. This was a guy, and I met the owner, and this is a junkyard that his father had started, and it became a destination for photographers, which is what it is now. And he has a styrofoam cup collection inside. A really cool guy to see. And we come to the vast section of Atlanta. And for those of you who know Los Angeles, Atlanta is very similar. It's vast, it's huge. It hosted the 1996 Summer Olympics. This is Centennial Park, right in the downtown area. Atlanta, the most important city in the Southeast United States. Oakland Cemetery is one of the gems to see if you're in Atlanta, the burial place of some very notable figures, the golfer Bobby Jones, the writer Margaret Mitchell, soldiers, slaves, all were buried in Oakland Cemetery. Another thing, a must-see, is the King Center, honoring Dr. Martin Luther King and his wife Coretta. And this is in an area called Sweet Auburn, which is very rapidly gentrifying. And not far from there is the Carter Center, on where there's the Carter Museum, Presidential Museum, and then the Carter Center, which is a nonprofit that does work all around the world. Atlanta, if you've never been, is a place you need to spend some days in. It's got very interesting neighborhoods. This is the Ponce Highland neighborhood. It's an interesting city. It unfortunately is a very congested city too. And so we move from Atlanta on down. We come to Jonesboro. Jonesboro, there was another Civil War battle. The model for Tara in the novel Gone with the Wind is in Jonesboro. And I met Mickey and Susan, and they took me for a tour of Stately Oaks. I was the only person who was touring it, and they were thrilled to death to have me. And so we come to Middle Georgia, and we come to Macon, and I spend more days in Macon. I love Macon. But I had to make a pilgrimage to the Rose Hill Cemetery. This is where there is a whole area devoted to the members of the Allman Brothers Band. And they're at Rose Hill, but they're so cool monuments. So it's an 1840 cemetery. And downtown Macon is being fixed up and renovated. Otis Redding is from Macon. Little Richard is from Macon. So there's all kinds of music venues. And so this is Middle Georgia. And we start to come into South Georgia, okay, which is all about agriculture. And you see things that are out of another era. This is a repurposed school bus carrying harvested watermelons. This is outside of Vienna, Georgia, as the natives pronounce it. There are some really quirky towns. A must-see stop is Tifton. Tifton could have died, but it had some people who really pushed hard to keep it alive, to keep it vibrant, and a definite must. Downtown Valdosta. Valdosta is at the bottom of the state. Much of Valdosta's commerce has moved right next to the interstate. The downtown area was really hit by recent hurricane flooding. And we come to Florida. Florida was so big that I had to divide it into 2 chapters. So it is 479 miles. A lot of it is parallel to I-75. In my part 1, I talk about Florida in general, and the area, everything from the Georgia border to Tampa. Sunshine, it's a sunshine state. There's real estate issues, there's population issues, there's climate issues. Everything is there in Florida. And what I always tell people, and I will tell you, is see it now. see it right now because it's still open, particularly the area to the north. But I think new construction is going to alter the state even further. This is the Stephen Foster Folk Culture State Park in White Springs. There's some real interesting, cool old pieces of Florida. This is a barber shop in Newberry, Florida. Rainbow Springs State Park was a big tourist destination until 1970s when a small thing called Walt Disney World opened. 1971, and this is now a state park. It couldn't make it as a tourist place anymore, but there still are all kinds of cool things to see. And there's the Blues Brothers as you move along the road in Denellen. And another must-see attraction is the Weeki Wachee Springs State Park. You gotta go. You gotta see the Mermaid Show. They've been performing since 1947, and hopefully they'll continue on. And there's a bookstore that I think needs to sell my book. This is in Shady Hills. And we come to Tampa. Tampa, with the Henry Plant Museum / University of Tampa, a landmark. This was built in the 1890s. Henry Plant was an entrepreneur, owned a railroad. Tampa's really old. It's been settled by indigenous people for centuries. The Spanish arrived in the early 1500s. The city's had lots of booms and busts over the years. And they're rehabbing their downtown. What they're trying to do is to do what every town wants to do, which is to bring people there and make it walkable. And so this is a streetcar, long forgotten transportation. It's growing quickly. It did not receive a direct hit from hurricanes Helene and Milton, but it had a lot of flooding damage. It's been one of the it cities. A lot of population has moved to Tampa. We'll see if it continues. Ybor City is a part of Tampa neighborhood. It's where cigars were produced. The roosters and chickens are protected symbols of the community. It's a National Historic Site. A lot of entertainment and dining is there. Unfortunately, cut off by some big interstate highway stuff. And we come to part two, SoFlo, South Florida, the Tam-Miami Trail, which starts right from the southeast end of Tampa. A lot of population has moved to South Florida. Area has been hit by some massive hurricanes, as we know, in recent years. This is an old sign near Bonita Springs. I found this in many ways a hard one to see because there's a lot of stuff that I wish I could change. But it's a disappearing Florida. The Ruskin Drive-In has a retired couple running it. He gets offers every single day, as he said, to sell the property. There's a great big Amazon warehouse type thing next to it. It's the only drive-in left on the west coast of Florida. I hope he can continue to hang in there. So there's a lot of development in what was once kind of just open land. A must-see is in Sarasota, right off the road. Catazan was the home of John and Mabel Ringling, the Ringling Brothers Circus. They were collectors of art. There's a huge art museum there. There's a huge museum devoted to circus memorabilia there. Definite stop. Sarasota, though, I would say is a city that is once a very slow-moving retirement-based city. It's really congested now, and certainly in certain times of the year, almost impossible to go through traffic-wise. But one thing that you'll see, they're not far away. They're not a lot right next to it are the beaches. There's multiple beaches along the Gulf Coast. There was a lot of beach destruction from recent hurricanes. This is near Venice, Florida. This is crossing the Peace River Bridge near Punta Gorda. And this is unfortunately something you see over and over and over again in your drive along the road. this private residences, golf course developments, where there's a security gate, and then you see one after another after another. This is near Cape Coral. Cape Coral is a city that most people have no idea about, and there's 240,000 people there now. It's larger than any other city aside from Tampa. It's expected to grow to 400,000 by 2050. If you can get off the main road, 41, which can sometimes seem like nothing but a great big service road, and you can get some of on the older portions, I recommend it. There's interesting things to see. This is near Bonita Springs. And the road comes into Naples. Naples is very upscale. It's big, touristy, it's very nice. The cost of living for service workers is a huge challenge. And most service workers don't live in Naples. They can't afford to, and they make long commutes. And this is something that they're grappling with as a city. One thing that I always loved about Florida was, and over the years, was to see shell shacks. And here's one that is in Naples. They used to have many of these, and a lot of them are disappearing. And we leave Naples and Marco Island, and we begin to go through the Tamiami Trail, goes through the whole Everglades region. This is a statue of Baron Collier. I have an extended vignette on him. Baron Collier, once Florida's largest landowner, instrumental to the completion of the Tamiami Trail. He provided funds to the state of Florida to finish it. The Everglades is gorgeous, and the Tamiami Trail, unlike Alligator Alley, which is further to the north, which is I-75, one is one you can get on and off at very easily. Unfortunately, it's also a road that's taken forever to fix, because when it was built, it cut off the natural flow of water to the Everglades, so they've had to make a series of culverts and tunnels. Take an airboat tour. Definitely see this beautiful, beautiful area, the river of grass. You'll see alligators. If you've never seen an alligator up close, you'll see them right along the way. Alligators hunted almost to extinction. They're put on the endangered list. They've made a big comeback. The smallest post office in Okeechobee, Florida. And not far away from there is Joni's Blue Crab Cafe. You gotta go. Okay. Watch out for the gators. And then a sobering monument along the way, the Value Jet Crash Memorial, the worst airplane crash in Florida history. We leave the Everglades, we come to the Miami metro region, and adjacent to Miami is Coral Gables, one of the first planned communities in the United States. Beautiful place to see. Not far from there is Vizcaya, the home of the industrialist Charles Deering. It's now a museum and gardens. All kinds of wedding pictures and quinceanera pictures and so forth are there. If you travel on 41 through this area, you are through an area that is often known as Calle Ocho, okay? This is Little Havana. This is the historic district through this area, and it's endangered by gentrification. There's a lot of tourists now in Calle Ocho. Go now to see it. Wow, it's still kind of cool. A very famous nightclub in Little Havana is the Ball and Chain. Great salsa music, great mojitos. The Cuban emigre population is now well into the second and third generations. And so time will tell as to how this all plays out. Once this little pocket of Cubans is now rapidly spreading out. And so we move on to the official end of the road in the Brickell neighborhood. It's the financial district, all kinds of new construction, skyscrapers going up, big surge in population in this area of Miami. But prior to that, prior to 1999, 41 ended in Miami Beach. And so which is still a tourist mecca. It ended at the intersection of A1A, otherwise known as Collins Avenue, And in many ways, Carl Graham Fisher from Indiana, founder of the Indianapolis 500, originator of Highway 40 and the Dixie Highway. I have an extended vignette in the book. He was Mr. Miami Beach, and a very flawed character, anti-Semitic, a racist, a visionary, a very flawed person. And Barbara Capitan, who grew up in the North Shore, came to this area and she saw all the Art Deco stuff, and it was going to the wrecking ball in the late 1970s, and she got it protected. And so South Beach is a really, really fantastic place to see Miami Beach. And so I thought that the best place for Highway 41 to end is there, right at the shores of the Atlantic Ocean, the unofficial end of a great American road. And so the final part of the book is the American journey. And 100 years later, a very different America exists, as we know. The Boulevard of America, what did I learn? I learned many things. The continued role of indigenous people that I knew so little of, why cities, states, and counties still matter, where people live and why. Travel from the north to the south and back again allows us to see an immensely complex country. The future is already here, but the past refuses to die. New technologies may enable great things or terrible things. Travel on 41 to see the past, the present, and very possibly the future. And thank you.